So I have gotten super into Buddhism in the past 3 or 4 years, and I want to share what I've learned with anybody who wants to listen. So Buddhism is a philosophy. I consider it a philosophy. Some people consider it a religion. That started many hundreds of years ago with this guy named Sakyamuni Buddha. And I'm pretty sure he was from a really wealthy family. And he ventured off on his own and left his family in order to talk to regular common people. So he went off on his way into the city and started talking to people. And he would talk to so many people. He would talk to the grocer and the meat guy and the fashion lady. And he just kept talking to people and getting to know people and really appreciating every single story for what it was exactly had to offer. And one day he stopped suffering. And that's kind of what happens with Buddhism is the more you get to know people and the more you hear the human story, which every story is a human story. One day you just stop suffering and it's you Buddha or whatever. I was sitting in a Van Gogh exhibit and I had this vision of a Buddha and my suffering ceased. It doesn't mean that you don't have preferences anymore. You still want coffee or tea, but it's not in the same way as before. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to have a bad day, but the suffering is not concrete anymore. It's very subtle. Let's see, and then what else? And then there's enlightenment, and there's different stages of enlightenment. I've experienced kind of having a rainbow vision or a white light or things like that. It also comes from Mayan culture and things like that. But basically, the more you meditate and the more you focus on the human story and the human experience, loving all races, loving yourself, loving the other, having more wisdom, having more compassion, that is really what will help you progress in your quest as a Buddhist. I don't really consider myself a Buddhist because I wasn't really raised as a Buddhist, but I've found the philosophy and the teachings very helpful in my own life. There are so many books and stuff written by monks. Usually if you want to get into this community, you learn from monks. So I'm not a monk, but I study with monks and I consider myself kind of a serious layperson, if that makes sense. So I practice pretty regularly, I meditate a lot, I draw mandalas and things like that. And I guess it's just been a community that's absolutely saved me. It's the freedom from the treadmill of life, if that makes sense. Every single day there's a new bill to pay, a new assignment to do, a new job to get, a new errand to run. And Buddhism is a way to calm your mind and really just focus on what matters, which is love and family and freedom and wisdom and compassion and joy. So a book that I can highly recommend is the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. That's kind of a serious book. It's a little bit more if you want to meet some serious monks. That's the guy who wrote the book interviewed a lot of really serious monks and stuff like that. And then there's lighter books. I really love Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a very, very established monk who started a bunch of charities and was a really influential and beautiful person. One of the teachings that stands out from one of his books that I really remember is you plant seeds inside yourself and that's what you will get back from the world, kind of energy of the universe. What you put out into the universe you'll get back. And so he always said he plants seeds of peace inside himself, he plants seeds of joy inside himself, he plants seeds of happiness inside himself, of freedom inside himself. And so I remember during a hard time in my life, I started to think about his teachings and I would just plant seeds of joy inside myself. I would plant seeds of peace inside myself. I would plant seeds of freedom inside myself. And once you start to do that, you kind of start to get that back from the universe. I started to see every single person as like an absolute joy to talk to, if that makes sense. Like old, young, like different races, different sexes, just like anyone that wanted to talk to me, I would hear them as like an absolute joy to meet and to talk to. And like Thich Nhat Hanh helped me arrive at that state of mind, which like I think is really like amazing. I love his work. So like read his books. His books are lighter and more fun. Like the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying is like a little more serious. But those are like my favorite books on Buddhism. There are tons of books on Buddhism. You just go online or on Amazon or whatever. I'm sure you could find tons of books on Buddhism. There's no like Bible or like tome. There's no like main book on Buddhism. It's all just like different monks like kind of like espousing their teachings. So you kind of have to like find the book that appeals to you. But I love that. I love that it's like every single monk kind of has their own perspective. There are different lineages of Buddhism as well. There's the Kadampa line of Buddhism. There's like, I don't know, other lines of Buddhism. I don't know all the proper names and stuff. I kind of think like I've started my own line of Buddhism, which is kind of like lame of me, but I don't really, like I'm not a monk, so I feel a little disincluded because I'm not a monk. But I think like there could be a line of Buddhism that's kind of like economic, if that makes sense, because I really arrived at the teachings of Buddhism by studying capitalism, which is kind of odd, but I'll explain in a second. Basically, I realized that like the best companies are the companies that can hire people of every class, of every race, of every gender, and like the biggest companies are companies that hire almost everyone, right? Like no one is left out of the company perspective. Like class, for example, like Amazon has workers at every level of class, like from the highest intellectual knowledge worker to someone who's like shipping packages and driving, you know, the Amazon trucks that ship the packages. So I started to realize that there was something like human about running companies, that like the more you understood every single class level and every single like worker's day, the more you were like the better leader, basically. So I found Buddhism by studying business and capitalism, which is sort of different. That's kind of my intro to Buddhism. I hope I have like more to say in the future. I guess I'll keep reading and keep learning and keep wisening and continue to update you guys on what I learned. All right, thank you, peace.